Hello, gentlemen. Today, let's talk about the Spanish Civil War. Now, it is odd that we find the Spanish Civil War here at this point in our reading, if only for the fact that we haven't really seen Spain do much of anything in the past about 150 years of our textbooks reading. They didn't really participate in World War I at all. They participated very meagerly in World War II, only providing little aid to the Axis powers. And anything prior to that, but after the War of Spanish Succession, was nothing in the realm of European war and political strife. And so that sort of separation created a political separation in Spain. They really became a nation of their own. They didn't really participate in the major advances of European identity that had occurred in the rest of Europe. So when we discuss the Spanish Civil War, and in particular its effects, we keep that idea in mind, its individuality, its very unique flavor. And so for this presentation, I'm not going to focus on the particular battles of the Spanish Civil War itself. The really important point, of course, of the Spanish Civil War is that the conservative right-wing area of France won, and Francisco Franco was installed to power. So that's from that lens we can see a lot of unusual effects occurring in the Spanish political realm. And so for this presentation, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to discern exactly what it was that Franco was after, what the right wing in Spain was after, and what made it both, in one sense, predictable, but also very unique to Spain. And we're going to do that by analyzing the 26-point manifesto of the Falange Party. The Falange Party was basically the big right-wing party in Spain that supported Franco's rule. So let's start with point number 1. We believe in the supreme reality of Spain. The strengthening, elevating, and magnifying of this reality is the urgent collective goal of all Spaniards. Individual, group, and class interests must give way in order to achieve this goal. So now what we see from this is first an emphasis on, one, Spanish unity, but also Spanish supremacy. The idea of Spain and the whole of Spain, not, let's say, Catalonia or the Basque region or the various provinces in Spain, but rather Spain as a whole, as a national unit, that is supreme, and that is the best and most important object of the nation, and upholding that goodness, that supremacy. And in the second part of that statement, we also see the principle of individual, group, and class interests. So, in one sense, the Falange Party was somewhat Marxist, not truly. They did not embrace obviously the solutions of Marxism. They were not communists by any stretch. But they did recognize the idea of individual struggles, of group struggles, of class struggles. Those were present in their mind. They recognized that those existed. But they believed that in order for a nation to be truly good, to promote the true well-being of the citizenry, that the government couldn't focus on those. It couldn't destroy itself through the machinations of class struggles and the support of the proletariat in order to get there. It just wouldn't work. And so they said that all sorts of struggles, whatever may exist, though important, must submit ultimately to the goal of national unity. The next 5 points basically go into greater, more detail about what that's going to look like, especially as a means of making Spain great again, so to speak, in the realm of the military, their sphere of influence, and so on. So point number 6. Our state will be a totalitarian instrument, not beating around the bush there, to defend the integrity of the fatherland. All Spaniards will participate in this through their various family, municipal, and syndical roles. So note about that last phrase there. the family, municipal, and syndical roles. In the Francoist regime, voting was not performed, well, for him at all, but on a municipal level, it was not a universal suffrage. It was not simple majority ruled for even the representatives of the municipal councils. Rather, various groups would cast votes in their blocks. And the three blocks were first the family, second the municipal area, the region, and then the syndicate, which is basically the industry that you worked in. And based on the results of those voting blocks, leaders on a local level will be chosen. Continuing, there shall be no participation in it by political parties. We shall abolish the system of political parties and all of their consequences, inorganic suffrage, representation of clashing groups, and a parliament of that type that is all too well known. Spain really looked at the nations of Europe, in particular the UK, France, and the UK's descendant, the United States, and saw the internal political conflict within the various parliaments or congresses or whatever was in the country. And they didn't like that at all. That was something that really ground their gears, so to speak. It was an affront to the idea of government that they'd had for so long, which was of a monarch, wherein the monarch would unify the state around one goal. And so these ideas of democracy and having parliaments was fundamentally just too divisive for them, especially given their supreme goal of Spanish supremacy. So continuing to point number 9, our conception of Spain in the economic realm is that of a gigantic syndicate of producers. We shall organize Spanish society cooperatively through a system of vertical syndicates for the various fields of production, all working toward national economic unity. Once again, we've got the theme of unity, but here it's not the American right-wing view of the economy wherein the free markets and self-interest rule and that creates individual wealth, but rather that all the various industries and different workers and the different classes, they do indeed do different things and they engage in different fields, but their supreme goal, their one goal, is for Spanish supremacy. It's not for individual good, but rather for collective good. There is this idea of sacrifice for the state here. Going on to point number 10, we repudiate the capitalist system which shows no understanding of the needs of the people, dehumanizes private property, and causes workers to be lumped together in a shapeless, miserable mass of people who are filled with desperation. Our spiritual and national conception of life also repudiates Marxism. We shall redirect the impetuousness of those working classes who are today led astray by Marxism, and we shall seek to bring them into direct participation in the fulfilling of the great task of the national state. So, one might have reasoned, if we'd only heard the first half of that statement, that they were Marxist. But rather, they clarify that even though they're not Marxist because they don't have Marxist goals, they are indeed Marxist in some sense that they embrace Marxist criticisms of capitalism. Their solution is just a little bit different. Instead of abolishing the state and creating some kind of anarchist society, or by using the state as a means of total redistribution of wealth, the Falange idea, the Francoist idea, was to nationalize industry and so on as a means of using economic unity to correct the class struggle. So in these points, we can start to get a flavor for what Franco was really after, what Spain was really after. On the one hand, it seems that they may have been somewhat fascist, but in other respects, they're very characteristically right-wing. And in another way, they truly embrace their unique heritage of their monarchy. Most of the European nations during this time, they'd thrown it away, but that idea of authority and Spanish supremacy was really ever present in Spain. And that really captures what Spain's Spanish Civil War and Franco were all about.